Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the show today on this Thursday, the 15th of February, 2022. What we're going to do is we're going to talk about ancient prophecy. That's right. And it comes from multiple different sources, but one of the main books of ancient prophecy is the Bible and Scripture. It foretold events thousands of years in the future from when the writers were writing these events down, and they claimed something called divine inspiration. What that basically means is they were receiving information not just from themselves, but they were receiving information about future events from what they referred to as a divine source. Now, what we have is a situation here in the world. And I put a clip at the start of this video. It's in the comments section. I put a clip from YouTube of an old movie that was out there called Jaws, And I want you guys to watch the clip. Big sharks in the water. The guy's got a boat. Now, what does this represent? I'm putting it there for a reason. It represents something. The men on the boat and the boat itself is like this system that's running out there right now, with the political system, all the rich people getting richer and richer. This is like the boat. And they live in their own little world on the boat. And they feel protected by the boat, which is the system or the structure of the system that they've created for themselves. Now, in the clip, this big shark comes along. And it represents a threat to their system. This is like the people out there right now. What we see, the big shark, is like the people out there right now. They mean, in the boat, they went to prey on this shark, and they were putting chum overboard, which is pieces of meat and stuff, into the water to bring the shark. When the shark showed up, though, and they saw how big it was, he looks over and he says, I think we're going to need a bigger boat because of the size of the shark. So suddenly, the predators, the tables are turned on them, and suddenly they can become the prey. This is like the system out there. They are looking at the people, and they're saying, hey, we're not worried. We got our boat. We got our structure. We got our system. And we're going to prey on the people. We're going to make as much money off of them as we possibly can. We're going to suppress them. We are going to, we're basically going to trap them, like that's what they wanted to do with the shark. They wanted to capture it, take it on shore, and hang it up as a big trophy. But suddenly he says, oh, we're going to need a bigger boat because this is big. The realization dawned on him. Well, this realization hasn't dawned yet on the people who are running this system. They see protests are up around the world, but these protests are, I'm not going to call them small. They're fairly large protests, but they're not of a magnitude like what I'm expecting to come. I'm expecting protests to come amongst the people a couple years from now, a year, maybe 2 years from now. That suddenly it's going to dawn on them, we need a bigger boat. This is too big for us to handle. So what happens if the shark bites the boat in half and they fall in the water suddenly? Well, what happens if the people out there of Earth, if the protests become too big and they change? They don't become protests anymore, but they become something else. Something far more powerful. They're like the shark gaining teeth all of a sudden. He's going to crush the boat in half, and then they're going to fall into the water. I think, it's my personal opinion, that it's a showcase right now for the people. People are standing on one side of the fence right now. The people are finding themselves descending into a hellish nightmare of poverty. Slowly but surely. They're draining the people so that the people are having to rely upon credit cards. But that's just a temporary measure. And two, the credit card companies are nothing more than organized officialdom loan sharks. They're loan sharks, the credit card companies. They charge exorbitant rates of interest. This is just further suppressing the people, not helping. But what are they going to do? Inflation is squeezing them. And it's going to continue. It's going to get a lot worse. There's going to come a day in the future where these ones that are on the middle of the pyramid, see, the people represent the majority. Just like a pyramid, the base is much bigger than the pinnacle, or the top of the pyramid. And the base is what supports the rest of the pyramid. And this is the people. This is the 99.9%. You got 999 people out there. And then you got one guy that's trying to lord it over all of them and squeeze. Well, see, it would work if the one guy was fair that's at the top of the pyramid, above the others. But they're not fair. These are greedy criminals, and they are out to get everything they can. And not any one of them is going to stop. A mechanism has been put in place by which it's making them richer and all of the people at the base of the pyramid poorer. And any one of these people who are on the side of the pyramid where they're being enriched, they can't arbitrarily decide, well, I'm going to just stop this. What are they going to do? Give all their money to the people? No, they're going to hang in there with all the others who are getting rich, like an exclusive club, and they're going to continue to get richer. They're just trapped in this trap like everybody else. It's the mechanism, the system itself that's causing this to happen. It's a Ponzi scheme that was set up back when the Federal Reserve was put into commission, and it all started. And this mechanism is going to continue, but this mechanism is setting up the rich. It's setting up the powerful. It's setting up the ones in charge. It's putting them on a pedestal, and it's pointing the finger directly at them to the rest of the people on earth, and it's making an example of them and saying, these are the guys that's doing this to you. You're getting poorer and poorer. These are the guys that's doing this to you. You're now feeling like a slave. These are the guys that's doing this to you. So in a way, what it's actually doing is the system is actually creating a frame around all of the people in power, all of the governments, all of the people who have a lot of money, all of the people who are running this system are having a big frame put around them, so that they are in the frame for the rest of the world to see. And going back to this analogy of the shark swimming in the water, that's like the people. Except it's not a 24-footer. This is a shark that's bigger than the biggest whale on earth. And yeah, all the rich and the elites, they're in a boat. And it's a nice big boat. And they all feel safe in that boat. But the shark is 1,000 times bigger than their boat. Well, he says, we need a new boat. We might need a new boat. We might need a bigger boat. Well, they're not going to get a bigger boat. And when the people start to really wake up is when they start going hungry. For real. The masses start going hungry. That's when they start waking up. So what's happening with our food supply out there? Well, China just took half of the food supply for a whole year. Shoved it away in a corner someplace. Corn, beans, potatoes, whatever they could get. Rice, you name it. Half of the world's food supply. Do they sense that something's coming? Do they sense that a big shark attack is going to come and going to break the boat in half and shake the boat back and forth, and all these rich people with all their jewelry and all of their fine art, fancy art, and is all going to fall into the water to become chum for this enormous whale shark with big teeth 2 feet long? because that's what the people are. And I see this whole thing that's happening right now as setting them up. All the people who are in power and all the people who think that they are untouchable because they can make laws and they can do practically whatever they want. They can walk out of any court system, judicial system on earth or whatever. They don't realize the size of this big whale shark that's just underneath the water. That is the people. That they're outnumbered 999 to 1. And when the people get incensed at a certain point, maybe a couple years from now, and I mean, I know I'm the bearer of bad news for an awful lot of these rich mucky mucks out there. If they want to listen to my show, they're going to say, "Oh my gosh," you know. But this is the net effect of what's happening in the world. I can't stop it. Nobody can stop it. They can't stop it. Nobody can stop it. It's been set this way. Kind of like a cake, and once it's set in the mold, there's no changing it. But this is the mold. The mold is structured in a way that is exposing them for what they are, and it's setting them on a pedestal, and it's making so the whole world can view them in a bad light, a very bad light. And at a certain point, when the people start to go hungry, that's what's going to be the trigger for all of this. Nobody can stop that. The way this is structured, the fiat currencies are going to continue to lose value no matter what they do. If they try to cut off the spigots of money that are flowing out, that are supporting these fiat currencies, the whole system will collapse, and we'll have this whale shark come alive right now. But if they continue to support the system with money, the inflation's going to continue going higher and higher, and we'll have it a couple years from now. But even there's no way out. This is going to end terribly bad. It's going to end with the whale shark coming alive, tearing the boat to pieces, shaking everybody into the water, and then feeding. And during that process, the whale shark's going to somewhat destroy itself. Because in destroying the system, in other words, the system is represented by the boat, in tearing the system apart, the whale shark is going to tear apart what it needs to survive. It needs all the supply chains and distribution and the structure that the system provides. And it's going to tear that apart for a period of time. I'm thinking to myself 3 or 4 months possibly. But during that time when a restructuring is done, most people on Earth can't support themselves if they're on their own with nothing to help them for that length of period of time. Just imagine. I don't know where you guys live. Maybe you live in a community someplace. Gosh knows, it doesn't really matter that much where you live. Well, it does matter when this thing hits where you live. But the point I'm trying to get across is, just imagine if your lights went out, they're not coming back on. Just imagine if your telephone went dead and it ain't coming back because the system's lost its structure. The people all over the earth have just went nuts. And imagine what it would be like if you go to your grocery store. That's if you do have any gas left in your tank. All the gas stations are closed. You go to your grocery, all the banks are closed. Go to your grocery store and it's completely empty, totally bare. In fact, possibly the windows in the front might have been gone, and people are just hopping over the glass and going inside and looking for anything that might be left, any scraps that might be on the floor. A world gone mad. Why would the world go mad? Because they've destroyed the structure of the money itself. They have set it up as a global Ponzi scheme. And we're getting near the end of the... And that's why all of this stuff's happening. It's all interconnected. And, I've said on my channels, You want to escape all this? Safe places? Where can you go? What can you do? Well, you need three things. You need food, you need water, and you need shelter. Those three things are going to be very hard to maintain in a world in crisis. Especially to keep those three things and not have somebody else take them away from you. Where you are will be important. Remote locations are going to be good, especially if they're very remote. Also, locations where there is a strong support system. Friends and neighbors who all think like you do and you all know one another, and there's strength in numbers. But there's going to be bad places to be. In urban settings, densely populated areas that have very limited support from the just-in-time delivery systems that are out there set in place. Humanity also, at this period in time, has also set themselves up for this kind of a disaster. The advent of the internet and the computers have taken us away from a more sustainable environment and moved us into an environment where it all is supported by just-in-time delivery. What can I say? Our food production has all went online. And what I mean by that is, yeah, I know the tractors are still out there in the field, and they still plow the field and still plant the seed. But nowadays, this supply side delivery and supply chains is what keeps the farmers working. They need fertilizer for one thing, and fertilizer is going into short supply. What about parts to keep their tractor running? You know, they might have to wait 6 weeks on a part that comes from China or something. Or a semiconductor goes bad on one of their tractors or stuff. These are extenuating circumstances that can impact our food supply in a very negative way. What about the weather? It's been absolutely insane. You put all these factors together, and I see nothing more, nothing less than in about 2 years from now, we're going to start to have a population decline, and it could be massive. The thing is we've done all of this to ourselves. We should have stayed on a rock-solid monetary system. Gold and silver being a fundamental behind our monetary system. We should have stayed with the older technology to produce food. We shouldn't have went all gung-ho into this internet. We should have stuck with paper money that was backed by gold and, the old-fashioned cash registers that didn't even need electricity. We should have proofed ourselves against electromagnetic pulses that can come from the sun. Now we are so vulnerable to that. And nobody can deny that we don't get electromagnetic pulses in CMEs that come in from the sun unexpectedly and can wipe us out. What about governments? This gives them an edge. Let's take a look. You're talking about deep sea internet cables and stuff that if war were to break out, would be vulnerable to attack. In multiple ways, we've set our civilization up for decline and for a massive die-off in the human population. It's our fault. We couldn't, during these years when we've set ourselves up this way, we could have been setting ourselves up so that we would be structured in a way that was almost almost let's put it this way, very resistant to any stress that would be put on it, like a coronal mass ejection from the sun, and if it were to make a say we got some sort of big solar flare or something, and it were to knock out electricity to a part of our grid, it would be no problem because we would have the system structured in a way so that we could turn the grid back on and it wouldn't have very little effect because we wouldn't be running totally on computers. We put our total reliance. We went in all hog on this internet thing. I mean, farmers nowadays, for instance, they got everything on their farm connected to the internet. Stores where you buy your merchandise, they can't even sell you something unless the internet's online. Your bank, you're not going to get any money unless the internet's online. Your restaurants, your grocery store, everything, unless the internet's online, they're down. The registers are down. They don't even, nowadays, they trust in the electrical grid and the internet so much, they don't even put windows in their stores to let light in. Because they know that they can't even get you inside the store if the power's out because the whole store's dark. And they got no way of lighting it. I remember back in the old days, you used to go into a country store and they had everything you needed. But they had big windows. And the windows would let the light in. And they had little generally oftentimes they'd have a little pot-bellied stove that ran on wood in the center of the store. And a little country store and stuff. And they had them dotted all over everywhere. And they had a little cash register. And they didn't even need the power on to do a transaction. We threw all that in the garbage. And now we're just going to rely upon one big, giant conglomerate that's set up to the internet. Without any concern that the internet might go down and what will happen to all of us. The elite, the rich, the famous, the powerful, the ones in power, all of them are relying upon the structure of this system to keep them in their place, to support them. But they're the most vulnerable of all. They're the least capable of taking care of themselves if the system fails. And they suddenly find themselves in a situation where they can give orders, but nobody's listening anymore. Their money is totally valueless then. Because everything's down that makes their money operate. And so then all of a sudden they're going to find themselves as being just a regular person like everybody else. They're not the king or lord anymore. That's what can happen to the system because of these vulnerabilities that they've created for themselves. And they don't put any redundant systems in to stop this from happening. So they're not only being framed, but they've got a vulnerable system that could crash out of bed anyway. At the first sign of trouble, it could start coming apart at the seams. And once this system comes apart and order is completely lost, and the people don't care anymore who the president is, or who the prime minister is, or who the what I call it is, they don't care anymore. They're just out for survival. At that point, how do you restructure the system again? Because it took thousands of years to create this structure. And when that structure is lost, how do you restructure it? Well, the people created the structure originally to begin with, but now it's become totally corrupt. And if it goes down, my answer to that is the people that are left alive would have to be the ones that would restructure what remains. That's where we're at with all of this. We're in the most dangerous time in human history, where a number of factors, and there's so many of them out there that could bring down the system. Things like a bad virus, or a war, or just the fact that the money is all part of a giant Ponzi scheme. These are all obstacles we have to try to avoid in order to avoid our own, what could potentially be, extinction. But I don't think it's going to go that far. But regardless, even if it's not an extinction level event, Still, it's going to be an event, I believe, that reduces the world's population significantly, coming up within the next 5 years. And so I've been talking about this a lot on my channels, and people say, well, you're talking about the same thing a lot. Yeah, I am, because this is actually the biggest story there is. But not a lot of people are paying attention. But for the few that are paying attention, well, perhaps you'll be able to be one of the ones that live through it. Thank you for listening. Like and subscribe, and we'll catch you guys in the next show. Bye-bye.